Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's K-E-S-H-W-A-N-I, Keshwani. We are here because we want to improve our English, because we want to improve our vocabulary. The last day that we had the lesson was day number 30, which means today is our quiz day. For those of you who have been watching these for a while now, you know that at the end of every 5 days we have a quiz. Today is our quiz number 6. The last quiz that we had, quiz number 5, was at the end of day number 25. Today is our quiz number 6. In these quizzes, I do not take the time to explain in details the meanings of the words, nor do I take the time to write down the pronunciation and so forth. This is a little bit faster because we have to cover 5 days worth of words in one day, and I want to keep the videos as short as possible. As it is, they go to quite some length. So here we go, day number 26. So what I'm trying to tell you is that if you need to learn these words in details, if you want to learn the correct pronunciation, I'm looking for my marker is what I'm looking for, because this thing is almost dying. If you need to learn the words in more details, if you wish to learn the correct pronunciation of the words and so forth, and want to get a little bit more in depth with any given word, then go to that particular video for that particular day and you will find that word being covered in much more depth than I'm going to do it right now. For example, day number 26, the very first word we learned was contiguous. Contiguous is an adjective and it's pronounced contiguous. What does it mean? It means touching each other. Touching each other. So if the two countries are neighbors, here's another country, here's another country, they have a shared border, these two countries are called contiguous. Hence, one speaks of the 48 contiguous states. Or if one does not, then one should, because there are 48 states which they touch each other, and then there are 2 states which are not contiguous, namely Hawaii and Alaska. So that's what it means, touching each other. It means adjacent. This is going to bother me. This marker has hardly any ink in it, and I cannot find a bloody black marker anywhere. So adjacent, adjoining. Abutting. It just means next to each other. That's what contiguous means. Sharing an edge or a boundary. That's all. Let's learn to go to the next word. The next word, second word that we covered on day number 26 was incongruous. Again, this is an adjective. What does it mean if two things are incongruous? Or you can talk about two comments being incongruous. It just means disagreeing. Disagreeing. Not belonging together. Not belonging together. Not corresponding. It just means to be inconsistent. Keep in mind that this is supposed to be the quiz time. Hopefully this is not the first time when you're hearing these words. Hopefully you have already watched this video on day number 26, and this is just a quiz. That's what it is. The noun for incongruous would be incongruity. Incongruity, which just means to be incongruous. Let's move on then. Again, as I explained to you twice or 3 times already. Well, since we're talking about it, let's digress for a second. just this word that came out of the blue in my mind, and I don't like to edit my sentences, which is what I just did a second ago, and I don't want to edit it, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that sentence. What I said just now is that, as I said twice or three times already, well, three times is not what I wanted to say. The word that I wanted to use was thrice. I did not use that word because I did not know if you would understand it. Thrice, it just means three times. I just want to make sure that I spell it correctly. I have no confidence whatsoever in my ability to spell. I do, however, have a great deal of confidence in myself, in my ability to misspell. Thrice. It just means three times. So as I already said twice or thrice, that if you want to learn the pronunciation and so forth, then you go and watch the video. Right now I'm not writing pronunciations. The word is thrice. Next word that we learned was pragmatic. What does it mean to be pragmatic? Again, it's an adjective. It just means to be practical. A realist. Realistic. That is, realistic. Functional. And finally, utilitarian. If something is utilitarian, it is practical, it's realistic, it's pragmatic. If you're talking to somebody and the person says, well, that's a great idea, that's a great solution, but is it really pragmatic? That means in theory that solution is great, in theory that the idea works, but in reality it is going to be very difficult to implement it. It's going to be very difficult to actually go through with it. It's not pragmatic, it's not practical, it's not realistic. If some object is being defined as utilitarian, what you're saying is that it's functional, it's pragmatic, it may not possess any beauty, it may not have any aesthetic value, but it is pragmatic. The antonym of pragmatic would be, I need the room, so I'm going to erase this thing here, and we're going to insert this word way in the corner here, so that we can cover this in the future, even though I already covered it. The antonym would be romantic. Romantic, not as in the normal meaning that people know of. Romantic, actually, the meaning that the word romantic, as it is used in our daily speech, is the metaphorical meaning. It's not the literal meaning of the word. The literally word romantic means impractical. It means fanciful. Not fanciful, but rather fanciful. Oh, for Christ's sake. There is no dot here. Fanciful. Unrealistic. Pragmatic means to be realistic. Romantic means to be unrealistic. They are antonyms, they are opposite of each other. You must have heard of somebody describing something as romantic notion. Well, a romantic notion is an idea that is based on imaginations. It's not based on facts, it's not based on practicality, it's not based on any realistic assumption. It's based on fanciful ideas, fanciful notions, romantic notions. Finally, the last word that we learned on day number 26 was another related word, which is quixotic. Quixotic. Here I will write down the pronunciation one more time because it's kind of tricky. Quick, sort, thick. It just means to be idealistic, to be romantic, to be fanciful. I'm not going to write down the meaning, I'm just going to explain to you. It just means it's a synonym. It's a synonym of romantic. It's the antonym of pragmatic. Okay, antonym is the opposite of pragmatic. It's the synonym of romantic. It just means to be idealistic, to be romantic, to be fanciful. It comes from Cervantes, the Spanish novelist Cervantes novel, Don Quixote, where the hero was very fanciful. He had imaginations. He thought of himself as a knight, and he wanted to go fight the evils of the world. And he thought that these giant windmills were the evil giants, and he must fight them. So that's what he did. Anyway, it just means to be it just means to be impractical. It just means to be romantic, idealistic. That was it. That was the end of day number 26. Let's move on to day number 27. Let's see what did we do on day 27. Day 27 we learned some interesting word. What does it mean to qualify on a statement? Not qualify as in the sense of the meaning that we use in our daily life, which means in our normal conversation, which means to qualify for a job, which means to have certain credential to do certain things. But what does it mean to qualify in a statement? That's the meaning that most people do not know. It just means to put, impose, to put or impose. I cannot write today. I don't know why. To put or to impose conditions on your statement. To somehow limit the scope of your statement, to limit or restrict. On a statement. For example, if you ask somebody a straightforward question, particularly politicians, they always want to qualify their statement, because it just qualify. If you qualify the statement, that's the way to cover one's derriere. You don't want to leave your derriere exposed. So especially if you are a politician, so a simple question is asked: did you do certain things, or did you give this person this amount of money? They will not give you a straight answer. They will always hedge. They will always put conditions on your statement. Simple questions: did you or did you not go to that house that evening? Well, I did, but whatever. The but part, whenever you say but, whatever it is that you're going to say after but is your qualification, is your limitation, is your restrictions. It just means to impose string, rather not to impose, but rather to attach strings to something. If you attach strings to your statements, if you restrict it, if you limit it, you are qualifying it. Qualifying a statement. And of course noun will be qualification. So if somebody tells you, if somebody asks you a question, did you do the homework? Yes, I did my homework, but as soon as you said the but, the other person says, no, don't give me but, I'm looking for an unqualified yes or a no. An unqualified yes or a no means that the person is looking for an answer, a yes or a no, without any limitations, without any conditions on it, without any buts or ifs. An unqualified answer, an unqualified yes or a no. So that was qualify. Let's go on and learn a synonym. A synonym of qualify, which is equivocate. An equivocate means the same thing as to qualify. It just means not to give a straightforward answer. To make a statement in such a manner that it is susceptible to more than one interpretation. And most of the time, it is done on purpose. It means to give an answer in such a way that it is susceptible to more than one interpretation. And usually done on purpose. Usually done intentionally. To mislead. Okay? It just means to mislead, not to give a straight answer. To mislead, or not to give and straight. Why is it on if it's straight? Not to give a straight answer. It just means to dodge, to hedge. The next word we learned was prevaricate. Again, they are all related. It just means to avoid the truth. to evade the questions, to evade the truth. To speak or write evasively. To speak or write evasively. It's only there. If you're not giving straightforward answer, if you're not being forthright, if you're hedging, if you're dodging the question, if you're not being straightforward in your answer, you're prevaricating, you're equivocating, you're qualifying your answers. Another word we learned, which is again a synonym, is a colloquial term. Colloquial. It just means it's not a formal speech, it's an informal speech. Informally speaking, one speaks of waffle. To waffle means exactly what it is. They are all synonyms. 1, 2, 3, 4. They all mean the same thing. All of these words mean the same thing. To waffle means to dodge, to evade, to not give a straightforward answer, to put conditions on your answers, to qualify your answers, to impose restrictions on it, to attach strings to it. You're waffling. I said, don't waffle, just give me a straightforward answer. I ask you a simple question, give me a straightforward answer. There is no need to waffle, there is no need to prevaricate, there is no need to equivocate, there is no need to qualify your statement. Just give me a straightforward answer. That was it. That was the end of day number 27 rather. Let's move on to day number 28. On day 28 we learned some words which came out of nowhere, and since they did come out of nowhere I had to cover them. The two words were and for the native speakers, there are some people who watch these videos whose first language happened to be English also, not just non-speakers. I learned from the subscription on the channel, I learned that there are some actually Americans who are watching this thing, whose first language is English, not just non-native speakers. And for those people, the native speakers, this word is going to be very simple, very straightforward word, which is why I covered it, because I do not know how to pronounce the word and I did not know what it meant. Oh, I have to say it very slowly. I have to say it very slowly, otherwise I will muck it up. Meteorology. There you go, meteorology. Very difficult word. I still cannot pronounce it. Maybe one day I will learn how to pronounce that bloody thing. It just means study of weather. So I may still not know how to pronounce the bloody thing, but at least now I know what it means. It just means study of weather, meteorological. The adjective would be meteorological, meteorology. There you go, I did it just now. If I'm not conscious of it, if I'm not very cognizant of it, that I'm doing it, then it just happens. Infernal was the next word we learned. Infernal. What does it mean? It means having to do with hell. Having to do with hell. That's all. And please do not ask me where these words come from. They just come out of nowhere. I come across these words, and if I do not know, I don't want to learn them. And I put them in my list here, and that's what I'm doing right now. Every day we learn a few new words. That was it. After that, we learned 3 more words which had nothing to do with meteorology or infernal. The 3 words that we learned were, after that, on day 28, 3 words we learned were posterity, lineage and progeny. Let's start with posterity. What does it mean? It just means future generations. I shouldn't have put them all together. The reason I wanted to cover this word is because politicians always talk about future generation this and future generation this, and future generation this and future generation that. We are doing it for the future generations, we are doing it for our offspring, but none of them have the guts to actually use the word posterity, because they do not want to alienate the average Joe sitting on his couch eating cheeseburger and perhaps a popcorn and having a nice bottle of beer. They want his vote, so they do not want to alienate him, so they do not use the word posterity. But posterity would be a nice way of saying future generation. Offsprings. Descendant. Which is also the same word as the last word, progeny. We could put it here. Progeny is another way of saying future generations, offspring, descendant. Let's talk about the word lineage. I can feel sneeze coming. Excuse me. Excuse me. Lineage. Lineage goes in the opposite directions. We are not talking about the future generations, we are talking about our forefathers. So lineage, if you claim a lineage to with somebody, or I'm not sure if it's with somebody or to somebody, I'll have to look it up and find out. It just means a direct descendant. A direct descent from particular ancestors. So if I tell you that my great-great-great-great-grandfather was Bozo the Clown, then I'm claiming a lineage to Mr. Bozo the Clown. Do you understand? So here we go in the opposite directions. We go in the past as opposed to going in the future. Progeny and posterity have to do with future generations. And lineage deals with establishing a linkage to people from the past generations. Let's move on then. Day number 29. In day 29, I covered a word which I already touched upon on day number 27, I think it was. We talked about, when we were talking about pragmatic, day 26 rather. On day 26, when we covered the word pragmatic, we talked about the word utilitarian, we talked about the word romantic, quixotic, and in that context we touched upon the word utilitarian. And then I went ahead and covered it in more detail on day 29, the first word, utilitarian, which just means to be practical, functional. To be practical, to be functional, to be pragmatic. Voila, there you go, you see, pragmatic, which is from day number 26. As opposed, if something is utilitarian, what you're saying is that it has a functional value to it, it has a realistic value to it, it has a practical value to it, as opposed to having a static appeal to it, as opposed to having an aesthetic appeal. The example that I gave when I was covering these words were when one goes shopping for a car, some people, when they go shopping for a car, they're looking for a particular color, they're looking for a certain model, they're looking for certain certain features in it. They want the stereo, they want maybe the television in the back, and they want, you get the idea. And there are other people, when they go shopping, they're looking for different things. They have a different criteria. They say, I don't care what the car looks like, I don't care what the color is. What I'm looking for in the car is a reliable engine, a good mileage, it gives me a good gas mileage, a reliable engine, something that is easy to fix, something that is not as expensive to insure. Well, these people have the pragmatic approach. Their approach, they're looking for something, they're looking for, in a car, what they're looking for is something utilitarian. There we go, something practical, functional, pragmatic, as opposed to aesthetic. Aesthetic would be the antonym, which means having to do with beauty. Having to do with beauty. When it speaks of something lacking or something having no aesthetic value or appeal. If something has no aesthetic value, which means it doesn't have any beauty, it doesn't have any art to it, it's just, maybe it may be functional, but it doesn't look pretty, it doesn't have any aesthetic appeal to it. That was it. Let's move on to day number 30, the last day. Last day of our quiz. Egalitarian was the word that we learned. The word was egalitarian, excuse me. Egalitarian means to believe in a principle that everyone is equal. Everyone has the same rights. Everyone has the same legal, political, economic right. Everyone is equal. Egalitarian. To believe in this notion is to have an egalitarian tenet. There's the word. Well, not tenet itself is not egalitarian. It's to believe in that tenet. Tenet is how it's pronounced. Tenet, which just means an opinion. A belief. A notion. A principle. So if you believe in that principle, if you believe in that, if you have that opinion, if you believe in the notion, if you have that belief, if you have that opinion, if you adhere to that principle that everyone is equal, then that tenet is called an egalitarian tenet. You believe in egalitarianism. The noun would be egalitarianism, and it's pronounced one more time as tenet. Tenet, not to be confused with which was one of the reasons why I wanted to cover this word. You see, ten, it, and ten. Tenant. Tenant, of course, as opposed to a landlord. A tenant is somebody who signs a contract to lease something from you. Usually an apartment or property or something. Let's go on. Last two words that we covered on day number 30. The last two words that we covered were doctrinaire. Doctrinaire means a person who firmly and absolutely believes in his principle or theory without any regard to regards to its practicality. To believe in something, to believe in something with absolutely no regard for his practicality. Then you're being doctrinaire. That's just what it means. It's to believe so firmly in something that you absolutely forget to pay any attention to whether or not that notion is practical. And if you are of that frame of mind, then you are doctrinaire. You are said to have a doctrinaire frame of mind. Not to be confused this word, not to be confused with dogmatic. Those are not the same word. Dogmatic and doctrinaires are different. Dogmatic carries more of a negative nuance. Dogmatic, it just means to be arrogant. Here the person is not arrogant. They just simply believe in certain things without any regard to its practicality. But they do not try to impose their ideas on other people. This is different. Dogmatic person is very arrogant. They are authoritative. They authoritatively assert their ideas or principle, especially when those ideas or principles cannot be proven. They are unprovable, and yet they try to assert their notions authoritatively and arrogantly. And if you are being that, then you're being arrogant, or then you're being dogmatic. Good synonyms for dogmatic would be arrogant, dictatorial. Dictatorial means exactly what it says. It means to behave like a dictator. As you can see how strong this word is. Dogmatic means to be dictatorial, to be arrogant, to be opinionated. To have opinion about something is one thing, but to be opinionated means that you assert your opinion too aggressively, too vehemently. We'll learn this word in the future. It just means forcefully. If you impose your opinion, if you assert your opinion with too much force, with excessive force, or forcefully if you like, vehemently that is, you're being dogmatic, you're being dictatorial, you're being arrogant, you're being overbearing. And finally, the last word that we covered was imperious. I-M-P-E-R-I-O-U-S, imperious. Which literally, the word comes from imperial or regal. I don't know if you can read my handwriting. It's getting too sloppy. And when it's not too sloppy, and if I write it slowly, then I cannot spell it. Imperial. Regal. That's all. So that's what dogmatic is. If you're being dogmatic, you're being arrogant, you're being dictatorial, you're being overbearing, you're being obnoxious, you're being opinionated, imperious. Those are not good qualities to have. It has a very strong negative nuance to it. Whereas doctrinaire is more of a, you believe in certain things but without any regard for practicality, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're opinionated or overbearing. That's it. That was the end of day number 30, and therefore that's the end of our quiz number 6. Tomorrow we'll carry on with day number 31 and so on and so forth. So we'll go from day 31 to 35 and we'll have the next quiz. Every 5 days, we do every set of 5 days, and then we have a quiz. That is the system. And the idea, as I've explained many times before, is to learn few new words every day, and in the process expand our vocabulary and learn new words, make it fun. Right? I'll see you tomorrow on day number 31. Okay? If you wish to get hold of me for personal private tutoring, I tutor for all of these exams, for GRE, GMAT, SAT, and TOEFL. Just go to any of these website addresses that you see there. prep4gre.com, prep4gmat.com, prep4sat.com, prep4toefl.com. Go to any of these website addresses and send me an email, and I will do what I can to help you out in your preparation for the exam, whichever exam you're taking. Or you can simply go to kashwaniprep.com and send me an email from there. Alright, thanks.